All right, Alex and Lindsay, I have pressed the go live button, but who knows when people will actually catch this starting on YouTube. Alex, but before we really start, I know you attended the whole Drupal Zoom today. I only caught a portion of it. What was the vibe at the official Drupal announcement Zoom? I only caught a portion of it. What was the vibe at the official?
So I'm hearing a bit of echo.
Me too. Alex, I suspect you might have the YouTube video open in another tab. Yes, you do. All right, that's another reason to start slow. I'll share while we wait for Alex to figure that out. I was excited today to see that the instance of Drupal CMS that I created yesterday on Pantheon as RC1 was the newest available version of Drupal CMS. I made that yesterday, and then like minutes after 1.0.0 came out, I pressed the update button in the Pantheon dashboard, and it updated. I mean, that's just what should happen. But given the number of new moving pieces in play, I wasn't sure if it would, but it did, and that made me feel good. Alex, have you figured out where that other noise was coming from? Maybe not. All right. Well, while Alex explores that, Lindsay, how are you feeling?
I'm having so much issues with echo. I'm really sorry.
Goodness. That's all right. Lindsay, how are you feeling now that we've gone from release candidates to 1.0.0?
I mean, I'm super excited. I've never seen development occur this quickly for such major features in Drupal. And I've been involved with Drupal for nearly 15 years now, and I've never seen this type of activity. And so that's super exciting for me to have renewed interest, but also just collaboration across not just like vendors, developers, all sorts of folks. And so this is amazing.
Yeah, and it's been impressive to see it all come together this fast. If anyone wants to try spinning it up on Pantheon, I just dropped our release note into the chat here. I see also Scott Buscemi, our product manager, is in the chat. Scott is the person from whom I needed the official thumbs up before we published that release note. Hey, Mark from University of Michigan, I see you in the chat as well. Tara, Chris Reynolds, Aaron. It's fun to get a good turnout here in the live stream too. Alex has disappeared, but I expect he'll come back. Technical difficulties from Alex. Who knows? Given that we do have a pretty packed agenda with multiple guests, I feel like we should just keep rolling. Alex will come back. His moment on the agenda is in the latter half. So we'll keep it rolling here. I'm gonna slow fade the dance pop. And before we bring on our guests, I've got a video to play here that shares some of my own thoughts and perspective on like what it truly is the significance of Drupal CMS. All right. Drupal CMS is a new packaging of Drupal that's exciting because it's aimed at the marketers who use Drupal rather than the developers who build with it. No, the real reason to get excited about Drupal CMS is the recipes construct. Instead of thinking of your site as a child of an install profile, each site is a unique composition of applied functionality. Okay, the technical diagrams of recipes are cool, but their real power is that they have sparked more community collaboration than we have seen in years.
None of you have mentioned AI. We are racing into the agentic age, and Drupal CMS may be but a footnote.
Enough AI. Drupal CMS also has new answers to the oldest problems. Media, search, content workflow. Yeah, old problems. The future is experience building.
Single directory components.
Project browser.
The gold standard of no-code website building. Let me know in the comments, what is your favorite part of Drupal CMS? All right, I did have fun putting together that video, partly because I genuinely think each of those things. I do not know myself which of those is actually the most exciting part. I could probably talk myself into any one of those things. Alex, I think you might be back before I attempt to bring you onto the live stream. Could you give me a thumbs up or something in chat? All right. Not getting that from Alex, but we'll just keep it rolling. If Alex Moreno cannot tell us the most exciting part of Drupal CMS, I know some other friends who probably have their own thoughts on what is the most exciting part of Drupal CMS. We've got Body from 1x Internet, and we have Suzanne from Evolving Web. Welcome to yet another Drupal CMS party.
Yeah, great to be here. The party's rolling.
I'm also actually live streaming from a party. There's a party happening here in the office. We've been like since 5 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock now, so I wouldn't even dare to go out there now. Who knows what is happening?
We've got parties inside of other parties. That is the magic of the. I could probably stretch that into some metaphor for like recipes inside of Drupal CMS, but I'll leave it there. For those who haven't met you previously, Body, could you briefly introduce yourself and like what is your relationship to Drupal and the new Drupal CMS?
Well, I've been doing Drupal since 2007, since back Drupal 4.7, I think. Started my own company together with my two best friends, so my partner and best friend, 1x Internet. We are in Europe, and yeah, been part of the community now since 2013. In the Drupal Association board since 2018, where I was at some point with Suzanne in the board, and now with Alex in the board, who is not here, or he is, but he's
Alex,
coming.
we have you back.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
I was just talking about you, so just leave again. So no.
Okay.
And now recently, like the Drupal CMS, we are the track leads of the search, advanced search. So we've been like heavily 1x participating in that and building a lot of things. So yeah.
Well, it's exciting stuff. And Suzanne, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Suzanne Dergacheva. I'm one of the co-founders of Evolving Web. So I've been using Drupal as a developer and trainer since 2008. And for Drupal CMS, I joined last summer as the marketing lead. So I've been really into all the messaging and the brand and rolling out this new product as part of the leadership team. It's been really exciting seeing it come into being from the inside out. And sprinting the last few weeks to update Drupal.org and launch the product.
Yeah, there's so much work that has gone into this. It's been very impressive to see, and we kind of rushed into this live stream here. I don't think I even introduced myself properly. Steve Persch here, Director of Developer Relations at Pantheon. And we also have Pantheon staff members here also. Alex coming and going with the technical difficulties. Alex, where in the world are you right now?
I'm not far from Badi, in a way, not far in Madrid, in Spain, in Europe. So it's 8 p.m. at the moment.
Longitude and latitude. You're in the same time zone, but still, more than a few miles or kilometers apart. And Lindsay Catlett, how about you?
Hi, so I'm on the East Coast, and joining from Pantheon, I'm a principal solutions architect on our professional services team.
All right, so we have been saying the phrase Drupal CMS over and over and over again here. There's a good chance that at least one person watching this stream might be thinking, wait, what are you talking about? Drupal has been a CMS for like 2 decades. What is this new Drupal CMS thing? And Suzanne, as the person who has been marketing Drupal CMS, could you get a screen share going here and give us a brief tour of the Drupal CMS experience? Last You may have to hit the present button. There we go. Last week we had an internal meeting at Pantheon and found, oh yes, many of Pantheon's own staff members aren't quite sure what to think of this. But we see a new Get Started page here in Drupal CMS.
Awesome. So you can get a trial up and running in many ways. This trial I'm using here is just a link from Drupal.org. And one of the really exciting things about Drupal CMS is the setup process is really designed to walk you through the steps to creating your website. So this first step here, I can actually pick from pre-configured content types to add to my site. And any of these can be added on later. If you want to customize them, you can. And these are each one associated with a recipe. In the future, we'll probably see more options here and some options for maybe a flavor of Drupal. But for now, let's just pick blog. You can go and set up. And it's going to just ask me a few questions and start the install process. So I'm going to skip over to a site that I already have all set up here. When you walk through those steps and get to your site, the first thing you're going to see is this dashboard. I think the thing I noticed right off the bat here is that the whole interface is really designed for a content editor. And that to me is the biggest exciting thing about Drupal CMS, is that it's no longer a developer-centric tool. It's hardly even a site builder-centric tool. The language you see here is really adapted to content editors and marketers and things that they're going to be familiar with. So a few things I recommend doing if you're setting up Drupal CMS for the first time. You can go to the Choose Recommended Add-ons link from your dashboard, and that's what's going to give you access to the recipes. I know we're going to talk a ton about recipes later. And I see on that page, I'm going to see in a second, all the recipes that I can pick from. I see the content types that were offered in that setup process, but also things like SEO tools, AI assistant, forms, Google Analytics, just things that I might typically want. So I've already gone ahead and installed a couple of these just because they take a few seconds to add. And then going back to the dashboard, I want to go back to this idea of the whole interface being really designed for the content editor audience. So I look at the navigation over here and things that I see like the word create, having content and media at my fingertips. These are really words that content editors are familiar with. I don't see configure. All the other more customized options are further down in the menu. What I see front and center are really my tools for content management. And then if I go in and actually create a page, I'm going to see a ton of stuff that's already designed for me. So save and preview right up at the top, sticky buttons here. As I scroll down, if I want to add media, I actually have options for the size that I want to use. The media library is set up. I go in and I can pick all these pre-configured, well, we know that they're image styles, so it's Drupal folks, but I can just pick the size I want, and these are all going to be responsive out of the box.
Yeah, so this seems like a much more approachable experience than what has come out of Drupal core for forever, as long as Drupal has existed. You don't get this kind of, even though Drupal has been a content management system the whole time, you don't immediately upon the installation of core get this friendly of a content creation experience.
Yeah, and none of these are earth-shattering features.
Right.
Just that I didn't have to do any extra configuration to get these. And the other exciting thing is that anyone who uses Drupal CMS is going to start with this. So writing documentation or giving people training is just going to be so much easier.
Absolutely. I want to bring in a Lego metaphor on these live streams. I like to do crayons and diagrams, and it'll take me a second to reconfigure the what now what. All right, so I have here two two Lego sets that are vehicles, but of very different sizes. And Suzanne, as we were watching that demo, one thing that stands out is, okay, this is more approachable for content editors, but for someone who has been in the Drupal world for a while, they might be asking like, wait, what is actually different here? I've seen WYSIWYGs before, I've seen image styles before, and I bring these Lego sets in because I think we can think about differences in the mental model someone would use for assembling a Lego set. So both of these Lego sets, big and small, like you get an instruction book. And for the simple Lego set, it's a pretty small instructional book. And my elementary school son and I did this one in a pretty short amount of time. The DeLorean here from Back to the Future has a much longer instruction book with hundreds of pages, hundreds of steps. So for as long as Drupal has existed, it has been possible to build simple Drupal sites and highly complex Drupal sites. That is not new. What I see as the new part of Drupal CMS is like, how quickly can we build something complex? In the Lego world, when it's like literally toys, it's like it's enjoyable to put the pieces together one at a time. But if you're in like the world of billable hours, the client paying for, like the client who may just want the DeLorean done, they don't see any benefit in like the enjoyment the developer gets from finally crafting these things. And also there's some Lego sets that are not particularly enjoyable to handcraft. One of my favorite YouTubers reviews Lego sets and did not enjoy the repetitive construction of the Captain America shield because it's just the same thing over and over and over again. I see recipes as kind of a way to construct these like Captain America shield segments. If practically every Drupal site or a majority of Drupal sites need blog functionality, we don't all have to do the fine-grained clicking to assemble a sensible blog configuration. We could just take that recipe and go. Now, I also feel like, wait, we've had modules. What's the difference between the modules and the recipes? And part of the way I think about it is like modules are more like the individual Lego pieces, and the recipes are more like the relationship or the configuration that hold the modules together. And we've had things like installation profiles in Drupal, and an installation profile is kind of like you get some flexibility, like with the Back to the Future set. I get the option of having this set be slightly different, like Back to the Future 3. The car looks slightly different, but that's pretty much it. If you wanted a substantially different car, it's really no use to do all of these steps first. Just like it's not that valuable if you want a highly complex Drupal site to start with a highly complex install profile. You're going to rip it all apart anyway. It's more valuable to assemble it piece by piece until you have something like recipes. Now, I feel like I might have overstretched my my Lego metaphor. Can someone bring us back to the real world of how we have gotten to a point of assembling things by recipe rather than relying solely on the concept of install profiles and modules? Lindsay, I know this is a world and a problem space you've thought about a whole lot.
Yeah, so a lot of this comes down to what we consider config management in Drupal. And so it's helpful to kind of take a step back and think about how something like config management, that's how we are deploying these sort of Legos from, maybe one environment to another in Drupal. So in Drupal 7, we had something and all of this tells it's kind of an interesting story about not just system maturity, but about maturity of an open source project. So in Drupal 7, we kind of wrestled with features, and that's the best word that I can think to describe features. And so what this was, we're basically treating config management like code and hoping nothing broke. There was a lot of crossing fingers involved. And so this was kind of just the first phase of kind of these bundles of capabilities. So Drupal 8, was a huge evolution in that it brought native config management. This was a huge step forward. This put config management in YAML files. It introduced what we consider now as proper deployment workflows, but this still kind of had its share of challenges around things like partial config imports, dealing with production content, things like that. And so for me, and this is definitely, my opinion, is what kind of makes recipes transformative. It's not just better config management, because config management at its heart is it's managing state. And so the shift to recipes, you're not only able to manage state, but it's defining patterns. And so and so instead of synchronizing YAML files between environments, recipes has created kind of programmable and testable, and that's a huge thing, is that testable piece for this sort of system behavior. And so it's I guess in CS parlance, it's moving from imperative to more declarative programming for site building. And I'm a total nerd, and maybe others won't understand that, but that's a huge step forward in Drupal. And so just kind of a quick example. So say you have a site that needs slightly different content workflows. And so rather than, in Drupal 8, 9, and 10, we would have maintained multiple different config variations. What recipes allows us to do is it allows us to find a base pattern that sites can then extend predictably. And that's a huge differentiator as well. And so the result to me, and I deal with a ton of enterprise customers at Pantheon, the result is more reliable systems and more predictable deployments, and that's huge. And I think, and also these are very, very deep technical constructs. And, I've been dealing with Drupal, as an architect for many years, but what this is enabling us to do is you can encode these kind of senior level architecture patterns in a way that the entire team can implement confidently if you're a site builder. And to me, that's huge.
Yeah, I think about details like when I was in my previous job and building sites, I had a strong opinion on how views module URLs could be constructed, and that opinion was basically, I heard Earl Miles say that at Drupal Camp Chicago 2009, and I hung out that's the right way to do it. But that's not a sustainable or scalable way of distributing opinions or getting Earl Miles says the best way to do something is X. Can we put that in a recipe? It's hard to put that into a module, but it seems like it is possible to put such things into recipes.
That is, to me, what is game changing in recipes, right? Because it's a kind of recommendation. So in the past, you will go to a Drupal site to a customer and ask him what they want to do. And then you will go to Google or Stack Overflow or whatever, and you will research what module is the best one for solving that problem. And then you will apply your criteria on how many people are using that module, and then apply those recommendations that you are coming up, and just hope for the best, right? Now there is an actual recommendation, and that helps not just on knowing what to do, but also it's a cost-saving thing, because I don't know if people realize, but every time you will go into a project, you will have to go through the same repetitive task of setting up everything, right? With recipes, you just click a button and you have everything. You are saving days, and those days are days that you don't need to charge to your customer.
Yeah, quick metric that I did for a standard customer feature was there were about, and it was search, there are about 200 for, if you don't use recipes, there's about 200 standard decision points that you need to make as an architect or tech lead. That's reduced to about 20 by using Drupal recipes. And that's just huge for everyone, for the customer, for a tech lead, for a development team, for vendor. Yeah, that's awesome.
As long as we're talking about recipes, I feel like it'd be nice to have someone who could speak even more directly to the ins and outs of recipes. And look, there's Jim Persch, a late addition to the live stream. Jim of Canopy. Jim, for those watching who don't know you and aren't familiar with your work, could you briefly introduce yourself and your relationship to the world of Drupal CMS and recipes? And you are muted on your settings, it looks like. Maybe.
How about now? Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can hear you now.
All right. I am an engineering manager at Canopy Studios. I came to Drupal in a second life, one where I saw Steve Persch talk at a Drupal camp in Chicago and blew my mind. But I loved the idea of Drupal being a no-code site builder. Like, I didn't want to learn all this PHP and stuff, but I did have the mind of like the architect. Like, I knew what the client wanted, and I knew that how to do it in Drupal. So when Dries started talking about starter templates at DrupalCon Portland in 2022, like, he had me hook, line, and sinker there. So I decided to take my contribution time and work towards this recipes initiative. 2 years later, year and a half later, we were able to sneak recipes into Drupal 10.3 as experimental code. And I became a subsystem maintainer of Drupal core for recipes and default content, which we also snuck into Drupal core. And that provides the foundation for what Drupal CMS is. So a lot of people are going to be like, wanted to look at the code in Drupal CMS. There actually isn't any code in Drupal CMS. What really makes Drupal CMS magic is that it's Drupal 11, and recipes are applied to Drupal 11. So, you can go in and install Drupal CMS, which you can apply recipes. They don't lock you down. You can change what the recipe does in the instance. After you apply the recipe, it's yours. The recipe's ephemeral, it's gone forever, and you have a Drupal 11 site that, like Lindsay said before, we've taken 50 hours of development time and applied it to a site in less than a minute. So, the future is bright. Like Batty's team has an amazing suite of recipes that they use. We've been working on one at Canopy that saves our clients tons of money. We're working on what we call snack size recipes now. Say I want to add a password policy to an existing site, one that meets OWASP standards and makes you change your password after 90 days and can't be one of the previous 12 and all that annoying stuff that people hate, but IT teams love. Now we can do that in an instant instead of taking 4 hours and having multiple people look at it and review it. And so the power of recipes really makes the future of Drupal modular and with less code itself.
Yeah, that concept of applying a recipe, I think, is incredibly powerful. Like, just for a one-day demo that doesn't need to live into the future, like, modules were able to do this before, but modules carried with them the expectation, like, you need to be able to upgrade a module forever. But for some things, no, I just want to apply this configuration and then not carry that as a dependency or like an inheritance for the who knows how long life of the site. And I know we've had some mentions of search functionality. Badi, I think you and your team have been pretty close to that search world. Could you speak to, I'm guessing that the fact that recipes are apply once and then leave behind, like, probably gives you more freedom to make more specific decisions or recommendations than you might otherwise make if any given applier of a recipe was then like carrying a connection to that recipe forever.
Yeah, totally. I think that, we all had the problems with the distributions, like all of the agencies in Drupal we were all struggling with that because it was hard to maintain this so-called distributions profiles, and then then to install, like we all talked about the example of having a profile that we created, and then having to add commerce profile to that as well was not possible, and so on. So this is a game changer for us as in the agency world. So we have been using recipes, and like we talked about, or I think Jim said it earlier, we have more than 100 recipes already at 1x, where we're not just it's not just saving a lot of time for our customers, but it is also our junior developers. They don't need to know how to configure everything, the configuration and everything just comes there, and then you can turn it off, on and off, and so you have a lot of flexibility, and we see it immediately. We've seen it now in our recent projects, how much faster this makes everything. And again, how much faster we are actually updating everything and maintaining it is so much easier. So I think we are just at the start. We just launched today the Drupal CMS with the first set of recipes, and I'm saying it here, I think we are going to have hundreds of recipes coming out there in the next months, where people can start applying it, which fits perfectly to the question that is being asked in the chat.
Yes. Yeah. Good.
And yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Chris asks here in the chat, and I put it up on the screen here too. How are recipes discovered and applied? Is it Drush? Do you do it in the command line?
There's actually a PHP script inside of Drupal called Drupal, which you can execute. There is a Drush recipe command, which is a wrapper around that PHP script that's inside of Drupal. And then eventually you will be able to apply recipes in Project Browser. There is some magic in Drupal CMS that is working now that might not work on all contrib sites, unless Batty proves me wrong.
I'm testing it. It's live now when you say it. So all of the technical part is correct, but at the moment if you go into the Drupal CMS and you go into the product browser, which you find when you go to, if you're not a Drupal person, you go into extend when you're logged in. Then of course you see the list of all the modules, and then you see the list of recipes, and we now have 12 recipes that we can then install, and we can try it live if we want to, but let's not do that. Let's let everyone here try it out.
Yeah.
It works these are the
great.
default.
Yeah, it works great in Drupal CMS, but that's a hard-coded list of recipes that are in Drupal CMS.
Which brings me to actually what I wanted to say is that there is so in Drupal we have this we have the modules, we have the themes, and we have the distributions, and then we have the general project. And I was involved in the decoupled menu initiative back 2 years ago, and that was we were trying to do some decoupled stuff, and we didn't have a place for it on Drupal.org or in Git as a how do you install React stuff. So there was a general project created, and now actually people are putting recipes in there. And this is what Jim was referring to. Yes, we don't have them yet displaying automatically, but this is something that the DA and the Drupal community, the core team, needs to figure out in the next couple of weeks, I think.
And if there's anybody here that is interested, we have open issues in the recipes initiative issue queue. We'd love for some UX strategists and some technical thinkers on, because developers will just develop. We're going to make a list, and it's going to be a list of recipes, but, the Drupal Association's you slow down. You need to actually put some thought into it, maybe get some user testing. We have that need in the recipes initiative. So
I think the key is, I love what Tim Doyle, T2, said during the launch party, that this is not a landing party. This is a launch party. So the best is yet to come. There is a lot of work to do, but the recipe is there.
Yeah, and Alex, I know you're a part of the the Drupal Association board and body, you've got roles and connections, bigger than the technical details of Drupal CMS. Like what else needs to happen for the launch to keep propelling? Like what metaphorical rocket fuel does the community need to keep moving?
So I think a lot is needed because we are just at the start. And like, like it was amazing how Dries comes there in Portland and says we are going to do it. And then like there was no team, there was no leadership team, there was no advisory council. This was all created really quickly, and then get the track leads. And now we have a structure for that. Now we definitely need to have a structure of how is the governance going to be around Drupal CMS. We have in there a set of a lot of modules that are in the configuration that needs to be maintained because they are part of the Drupal CMS. They are part of the recipes. We need to have companies. We need to have contributors to be behind those modules, and we need to make sure that like all of them are maintained and they have double maintainership. There is active. We need to have the companies to help and basically commit to certain things. And the DA, and maybe Alex can tell us a little bit more about that, what the DA has actually, because the DA has been playing a huge role in this, in the last couple of 9 months. Last 9 months, last 9 months.
And I want to give, first I want to do a disclaimer because I'm part of the board of the Drupal Association, but here today I'm just a member of Pantheon and an individual. So everything I say is, my own words and my personal opinion. But I want to give a huge shout out to the Drupal Association staff because they've been under a lot of pressure. People don't realize that it's a tiny team, as Tim says. Tiny but mighty team. And when Dries said, hey, we are going to do this, the whole focus of this tiny team had to kind of change, to all the things that they were like in GitHub or GitLab. They were having all these priorities, and suddenly all of that has to change to accommodate this. So a huge shout out to them. I want to give as well a few highlights of what was going on a couple of hours ago of the party. Tim Lennon was the director of the orchestra or the launch center. There were more than 700 people. I think you were saying
online,
nearly 7, right?
Yeah, so 700, and we had on top of that streaming from parties. We had 62 parties, and let's just say that each party had 20 people in. We saw that there were other parties that had much more. That's like probably we reached out to 1,000 people live in an hour today.
So this is the highest attended Drupal event in history, right? A part of DrupalCon during COVID. So yes. To me, this is amazing. This means that, we have a huge community, which we already knew, but, having this kind of excitement, I have only seen this during DrupalCons, right? And having all these people, companies and people from all over the world contributing to the Drupal CMS success, we are on track, for example, to triple the contributions. These are the kind of things that we need to happen from the Drupal Association, right? The Drupal Association is tiny. They can't do a lot, but they can help the rest of the people achieve the success of Drupal.
And I think it is, it's just, remember, like we are all, some of us are old enough to remember this Drupal 7 and Drupal 4.7 hypes that were like, these were big things, and then Drupal 8 came and that was so hard for a long time, and everything became a little bit like, and then I think like it's so refreshing to like when you look back, you remember these 3 highlights that you've had in the past in Drupal, and this is definitely one of it. And I think this is just this is so much. This is like Chris Reynolds said in the chat here on YouTube. He said like, this was very refreshing to install Drupal CMS this morning, and I have to just agree with that.
and Chris largely comes from a WordPress background. Suzanne, a couple months ago, I attended one of your Evolve Drupal events, and one of the themes at that event was sort of stacking up Drupal against competition like WordPress and other web systems out there. As you're the co-founder of Evolving Web. I imagine it's your responsibility to make sure that your agency is building websites with the most effective tools, and sometimes that means not Drupal. How does Drupal CMS change the way you as a business owner think about when and where to use Drupal?
Yeah, I think it's exciting for a lot of organizations we work with who use Drupal, but they're running hundreds of websites, in some cases thousands of websites. And there are site owners of those organizations who go off and build a site on WordPress or Wix or whatnot. And we always want to support those users, but we would love it if they would use Drupal for everything. And I think Drupal CMS is a game changer in a lot of ways. These are organizations that already have Drupal knowledge, but now I think they will have a lot more momentum about using Drupal for more and more of their projects. And that's just from today, but the roadmap for Drupal CMS, like the product strategy, is a 3-year plan. Adding experience builder, adding a lot of the other UX improvements, creating more recipes. This is going to make it even more of a no-code solution for folks. And I think it's going to be able to compete really well against some of the other tools. And I think a lot of what we see being added to Drupal CMS are things that bring it in line with the expectations that content editors have. But Drupal, it already comes with Drupal core. So it's already, in a lot of ways, more accessible, more secure than the competitors. So it's really head and shoulders above some of the other.
Yeah, and I see some potential to get that no-code benefit while still keeping the attention of developers who very much want to code. To go back many minutes, Lindsay, you used the framework of like imperative versus declarative mental models as it relates to recipes. Could you unpack that a bit more? Because I imagine inside of there is a nugget of like what will keep developers engaged who may not otherwise think, who might otherwise opt out of like, oh, I don't want to work on a no code system. I want to work on a code system. In what ways will the shifts between imperative and declarative models potentially keep developers engaged in this world?
Oh, apologies. I thought I was muted. Oh, okay. So I think the key focus between like imperative versus declarative. So imperative is very focused on like how to do it. I guess. So very focused on like technical requirements, step-by-step instructions, things like that. Like this is very similar to like how features is architected in Drupal 7. A declarative approach, think about like customer outcomes. Think about what the customer wants. I kind of consider this as like what you want. If you think about like a content type, an imperative approach would be thinking about individual, like a technical architect or tech lead going through listing like individual field types that they need in a content type, whereas a declarative approach would be thinking about so going with the recipe-based approach, what do most customers need in a standard, maybe a content type that's called like stories, for example. And so the use case isn't going to fit for every customer, every single customer use case, but it will likely fit for most customer use cases. And so to me, that's the big differentiator.
Yeah, that's an exciting way of thinking about it. And to confirm my own understanding, I'll go back to that search example. Lindsay, you mentioned the way too many options that any given configurator would have to wade through configuring a module like Search API. Body, as I understand it, your company has been one of the driving forces behind the search recipe. And if I am building a site and I know I just want the best sensible starting place for search, I'm much better off applying the community accepted search recipe that Body and friends have developed than I am like installing Search API and getting a zillion checkboxes that I have to think about.
Yes, and so first of all, like I love that example because so Drupal core comes with search, so there is
Yes,
already search in Drupal core,
right?
and that's why it was also called advanced search because
Yes.
and by the way, like in this very short period of time, we managed to do like community surveys. Like we checked and we asked the community, like, what do you use? And we presented that in Barcelona. And it was amazing because like 90% of the hundreds that answered, they said like, we all use Search API. It's like, wow, okay, if you're already using Search API, you know, and then what do you else use? We use facets, we use autocomplete. These are all modules that that people were configuring every single time, and some of us were already like we had already pre-configured somehow, and so our developers didn't have to do it all the time, or the tech leads define it every single time. And I think like now we've just, you know, the market has changed also. Like we need to have it dynamic, and it was done in a way that there is even like we created a long concept with the hope of like that you could even have it like a decoupled search, because Search API we also have a decoupled version of that. And so like the more we do of this, the more you just have to click and then you can have this configuration there. This is just a game changer for anybody doing anything. So a note here, not all of the ideas that we wanted to put in made it into the version 1. Because and that I think applies to all of us in the track leads, because we all had like a really ambitious goals, but at some point like we had to ship a version that worked. So there's, for example, facets is not in yet, but it's probably going to come in very soon now. And again, like views and you know, we had to do like a lot of things, and just a little search is combining a lot of different things that needs to be configured.
And what when I was recently at WordCamp US, which the WordPress community also in the last few years has gone through a similar overhaul as their block editor, the Gutenberg block editor came in. And one of the things I was hearing repeatedly there was we now need to be extending blocks. Like as blocks came into existence in the WordPress world, it's like there's some core blocks and then everybody's making custom blocks. And I imagine we could see a similar dynamic with recipes in Drupal. Like they're the accepted recipes, but then everybody just goes and makes their own custom recipes. Jim, is there a way to like take the community accepted recipe and then extend it?
There is. One of the principles of the recipe initiative is that recipes should be composable, and individual recipes should be broken up so they can be applied separately or they can be built upon. So the first thing we did to prove recipe worked was to replace, well, we didn't replace because it wasn't removed, but was to copy Drupal's standard profile as recipes. So a lot of people didn't even know what was in the standard profile. They'd install with minimal and they'd be like, where's the media entities? Where's image and remote video? Now, as recipes, you can install the image media entity and you never need to do that again. You know, in Drupal CMS, there is a media recipe that creates image styles and responsive image styles. I think like I have one in our suite of recipes. I'm sure Batty has one too. Like I never want to create an image style config again, you know, because you need to create hundreds, right? If you're doing it right. We don't need to. So one of the things that I did initially when the recipe started forming in Drupal CMS was I looked at Martin's event recipe and like this is, I mean, he is the gold standard of date time things in Drupal, and his recipe is that. So I scrapped my event recipe, and now I call his event recipe and add some fields, some customizations that I need to it. You know, the same could be done with Batty and her team's search recipe, like maybe customize it for Pantheon Solar or another host. But you know, apply it to your content types. You know, one of the problems is that Artem on Batty's team has solved was, you know, how do you add facets when you add the search recipe to content types that exist now or may exist in the future. So there are ways to extend recipes, and we actually encourage it. So you can just do different things at different times, different building blocks, and, you know, encourage reusability and shareability. So again, you don't have to build everything. You know, go ahead, Steve.
Can I get AI to do all of the building for me? I know that's one of the recipes. You know, is I feel like it's somewhat coincidental that the timing of Drupal CMS has happened at the same time as like the whole tech world is looking at AI revolutionizing who knows how much of our jobs. So Alex, I'm going to bring your screen share on, because yes, one of the recipes that a lot of people are paying attention to is the AI recipe that puts an agent inside of Drupal. And there's I don't know that I totally understand it. Alex, what is this and what does it do?
So I've been super excited since I saw this. I think it was in Pittsburgh, DrupalCon last year or 2 years ago, when this kind of demo the first time. I have to say, I was doing this demo last week in the Friday forum that we have every week in the company in front of 100-something people, and it went terribly bad. And I think I found it why. It's because I was not wearing my Drupal demo hat. So everything should be fine now. I'm ready. So coming back to serious things. So one of the main goals for Starshot was making Drupal easier for beginners. And I think in an intended way, we have managed that with the AA agent. So if you go to a new brand Drupal French install, and if you go to the specific, for example, dashboard or any admin page, you will see something like this Drupal agent chatbot. So another thing in favor of the Drupal recipes is that I was trying to do this by myself, installing all the modules, configuring, and I lost a few hours without achieving anything. I just went to the recipe and I launched it, just a line, which I had to find how to do it, but it's relatively easy. And it had everything configured for me. I just had to add the API from ChatGPT, right? And then when I go to the admin or the dashboard in Drupal, I have someone telling me, hey, how can I assist you today? So I was saying we may have done Drupal a lot easier for beginners, because this is actually changing the way that you interact with Drupal, but also the way you learn Drupal. Because now you can say, hey, Drupal, well, tell me what you can do for me. And then you are learning in Drupal, inside Drupal itself, what you can do with Drupal, right? So Drupal will tell you, well, you can create or modify content types. You can set up taxonomies. You can add fields. Okay, but hey, I'm new to Drupal. What are you talking about? What is a content type, right? Well, actually, a content type, you ask Drupal again, and it will tell you everything you need to know about a content type, right? To me, this is a game changer. And this is just about, kind of learning. Why don't we do something more, for example, let's find what content types do we have once we understood what is a content type. So we are going to ask Drupal to give me that. Would you like to check the existing content types? Yes, please. You can see we are having a real conversation with the chatbot, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Chris Reynolds is saying in the chat that this is what he needs.
So let's wait a few seconds. This is what was failing last week, actually, because when you install it by default, you will have a 30 seconds timeout. And for some of these actions, you will actually need a higher timeout. And well, yeah, that's what we found in the demo last week. Things that you can do at the moment, for example, is get a list of actions that you can do, get a list of content types, get the list of, actually, I'm going to show another tab. Can I stop, or do I need to? No, I think I cannot change. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the kind of issues, that some actions take some time for the AI to come back with. And I don't know if that's probably a problem with ChatGPT. It doesn't matter. The thing is that, as I was saying, you are completely changing the way that you are interacting with Drupal, because now, for example, you could ask, hey, create a new content type. I'm going to add typos as well. Called Alex content type, right? And this is going to take some time as well. It will take a few seconds, I guess. But once we have this, we will go to the backend and we will see how our content type is there, ready to create new content.
One of the things I like most about this tool, and I think with all AI things, it's kind of experimental, but not only can you create structure in Drupal, but you can also create content. So, if you want to add a field, a taxonomy field to a piece of content to classify it, and you could populate it with the terms that are in there. So like add a currency field to my event content type and populate it with the most popular currencies in the world. It will create the structure in Drupal, but also create that content for you.
And this is, of course, only one of the things that the AI functionality in Drupal can do. We also have who is not installing today, like generate automatically alt text for images. Give me suggestions when I'm writing content. Like all of this is already available somehow. And now with the recipes, we're just going to have it more in front of us so we can easily do it. And I think it's going to be crucial to give out. So now the job is going to start where we figure out how we can make sure that people know about this. Because in the installer process, you didn't see anything called, do you want to install AI? You had to find out that there's a recipe for that. And then what that recipe does, you also have to read about that. So it's going to be crucial to when people come into Drupal CMS, that they will have a really good demo content. And then of course that documentation on Drupal.org needs to be awesome. So I think all this work will start now. So we can really show the world what you can do with Drupal, because we've been able to do this for a long time now. But now we're just a little bit bringing this out and saying and now anybody can do it.
Yeah. And I want to keep an eye on the clock here. We're just about at the top of the hour. Alex, thank you so much for showing us the AI world. If you're watching this stream and you're interested in trying it out, Drupal CMS as of today has a 1.0.0, and that's exciting. So some other tabs here. Jim is working on recipes in Canopy World. There's a whole recipes initiative. If you want to try this out on Pantheon as of today, of course, Drupal CMS is available as a Pantheon upstream. If you go to our docs site and look at the release notes, you'll find that, which will bring you in a few clicks to the Pantheon dashboard. You may have seen this before. You can install Drupal CMS freshly upon Pantheon in whichever region you choose. I did this just yesterday, and it worked. I'm excited to see where we go from here. So I'll bring down my my screen share here so I see us in a bigger. Thank you, Pantheors, Lindsay and Alex, for joining me here today on the live stream. And of course, thank you, Body from 1x Internet, Suzanne from Evolving Web, and Jim from Canopy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your other parties to join this party within a party. Thanks so much. And yes, I'll see you on the internet. Bye-bye, everybody.
Contribute to Drupal.
Bye.
Yes.
Help the DA.